I never thought I'd return from a 2-week fishing trip in Alaska to find a construction site where my empty lot used to be. The land, a quiet, tree-lined parcel I'd inherited from my grandfather, sat untouched for years. I'd always planned to build a cabin someday, but life got busy and the plot remained serene, a little sanctuary just outside the gated community of Oak Ridge Estates. As I pulled my dusty truck up to the property line, my stomach dropped. Bulldozers, dump trucks, a half-poured concrete foundation, and worst of all, HOA signage staked proudly at the edge of my land. Future Community Recreation Pavilion, coming soon. I jumped out, heart pounding. What the hell is going on? I shouted to no one in particular. A foreman in a hard hat turned, squinting. You live around here? He asked, skeptical. This is my land, I said, voice shaking. I own this lot. Deeds in my name, he shrugged. The HOA approved this months ago. Said it was unused common area. Unused common area? My blood boiled. I stormed over to the HOA office, a quaint little cottage near the community pool. Inside, Marjorie Finch, HOA president and self-appointed queen of Oak Ridge, sat behind a polished oak desk, sipping herbal tea like nothing was wrong. Oh, Mr. Callahan, she said, barely looking up. We were wondering when you'd show up. You're building on my property? I said through gritted teeth. Marjorie smiled thinly. According to our records, that parcel was never officially transferred out of the original development trust. We assumed it was abandoned. Assumed? I nearly laughed. You assumed you could just take someone's land? We're enhancing property values for everyone, she said coolly. Surely you can see the benefit. I left fuming but not defeated. That night I dug out the deed from my safe. Clear as day. Lot 47, 1.2 acres, legally mine since 2012. No easements, no shared ownership, just mine. I called my cousin Derek, a real estate attorney. They're squatting with bulldozers, I told him. He chuckled darkly. Sounds like adverse possession gone rogue. Don't worry, we'll shut this down. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I knew this wouldn't be easy. The HOA had money, influence, and a board full of retired judges and ex-lawyers. They thought I was just some quiet guy who'd roll over. They were wrong. The next morning, I met Derek at a coffee shop just outside Oak Ridge. He slid a thick folder across the table. I pulled the HOA's plat maps, covenants, and county records, he said. They're in deep water. Turns out the original developer had intended Lot 47 to be part of the common area, but the paperwork was never finalized before the company went bankrupt in 2011. My grandfather bought it at auction, filed the deed, and paid property taxes every year since. The HOA had no legal claim. None. They're relying on customary use and community benefit as justification, Derek explained. But that doesn't override a recorded deed. Not even close. Armed with documents, I filed a cease and desist letter with the HOA and the construction company. Within 48 hours, work stopped. The bulldozers sat idle. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope it was over. But Marjorie wasn't done. At the next HOA meeting, open to all residents, though most avoided it like jury duty, she painted me as a selfish obstructionist. Mr. Callahan would rather let prime land sit empty than let our children enjoy a new playground, she declared to murmurs of agreement. A few neighbors shot me pitying or annoyed glances. I hadn't realized how much goodwill the HOA had built or how easily it could be weaponized. Worse, they filed a counterclaim. They argued that because the lot had appeared to be common space for over a decade and because I'd never fenced it or posted signs, I'd implicitly abandoned it. It was a long shot, but in civil court, perception often mattered as much as law. Derek warned me. They're trying to drag this out. Legal fees, delays, community pressure, they think you'll fold. But I had a secret weapon, my grandfather's old journal. Tucked in a cedar chest in the attic, it detailed his purchase of the land, his dreams for it, and even sketches of the cabin he wanted to build. More importantly, it included dated photos of him mowing the grass, trimming trees, and meeting with the county assessor, all proof of active ownership. I scanned every page and sent them to Derek. This destroys their abandonment argument, he said, grinning. Now we countersue for trespassing, property damage, and emotional distress. I also started documenting everything. I took daily photos of the construction site. I recorded conversations, legally with consent in two-party states. I even set up a trail camera facing the lot. One evening, I caught Marjorie herself walking the perimeter with a surveyor, whispering urgently. When I confronted her, she feigned innocence. "Just ensuring we respect all boundaries," she said sweetly. But her eyes told a different story. They knew they were losing. As news of the lawsuit spread, Oak Ridge Estates fractured. Some neighbors sided with the HOA, worried property values would dip if the pavilion project collapsed. Others, especially those who'd clashed with Marjorie over paint colors or mailbox heights, quietly rallied to my side. Then came the flyers. Anonymous, printed on cheap paper, slipped under doors. "Did you know the HOA is stealing private land? Ask Marjorie Finch about Lot 47. I didn't distribute them, but I didn't deny it either. The rumors did the work for me." At the community barbecue, traditionally, a Marjorie-orchestrated love fest. Tension crackled like static. Mrs. Langley, who'd once reported me for leaving my garage open too long, pulled me aside. "My son's a land surveyor," she whispered. He checked the records. "You're right." They crossed the line, literally. Even Mr. Chen, the HOA treasurer, started avoiding Marjorie in meetings. When I caught his eye, he gave a barely perceptible nod. The board was crumbling from within. But Marjorie doubled down. She called an emergency vote to ratify the pavilion's location retroactively, claiming community consensus. The notice went out with just 48 hours. Notice, a clear violation of HOA bylaws requiring 7 days. Derek filed a motion to invalidate the meeting before the email even hit inboxes. Then the breakthrough. While reviewing old county GIS maps, Derek found something astonishing. In 2015, the HOA had applied for a grant to develop underutilized green space and enlisted Lot 47 as HOA owned. They'd knowingly misrepresented ownership to secure $75,000 in public funds. "That's fraud," Derek said, eyes gleaming, "and possibly criminal." I went to the county auditor. Within a week, an investigation opened. The construction company, fearing liability, pulled out entirely. The half-poured foundation sat like a monument to arrogance. Marjorie tried damage control. She knocked on my door one rainy evening, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. "We can settle this quietly," she said, voice uncharacteristically soft. "The HOA will pay for restoration. No one needs to know about the grant." I looked past her, at the scarred earth where my grandfather's trees had been uprooted. "You didn't just take land," I said. "You erased his memory. And you thought I wouldn't notice because I keep to myself." She flinched. "No deal," I said and closed the door. The next day I hired a local contractor, not from the HOA's approved list, and began restoring the lot. We planted new saplings where the old oaks had stood. I installed a simple wooden sign. "Private property, Callahan land since 2012. Neighbors slowed their cars to read it. Some waved. A few even stopped to apologize. The HOA's power wasn't just legal, it was psychological. And that illusion was shattering. But Marjorie still had one card left to play. Marjorie's final move came in the form of a personal attack. At the next HOA board meeting, now, attended by nearly half the neighborhood, she accused me of harboring resentment and using legal technicalities to punish the community. Then she dropped the bomb. "Mr. Callahan hasn't paid his HOA dues in 3 months. A murmur rippled through the room. I hadn't even realized. I'd missed payments. My autopay must have failed when I changed banks before the Alaska trip. But before I could respond, Mrs. Langley stood up. "He paid them last week," she said firmly. "I saw the receipt when we were reviewing financial records for the garden committee." She turned to Marjorie. "You removed that payment from the ledger, didn't you?" Silence. Then Mr. Chen stood. "I've been auditing the HOA accounts quietly," he admitted. "There are discrepancies, unapproved reimbursements, double-billed landscaping contracts, and yes, the missing payment." The room erupted. Marjorie's face went pale. The board called an emergency executive session. By morning, she'd resigned. The county investigation expanded. The grant money had to be repaid with penalties. The HOA's insurance carrier launched its own inquiry. Oak Ridge Estates would survive, but it would never be the same. 2 months later, a judge ruled decisively in my favor. The HOA was ordered to restore Lot 47 to its original condition, or pay me $20,000 in damages. They chose the latter. I used half to reforest the land, and the rest to build the cabin my grandfather had dreamed of. But the real victory wasn't legal. It was communal. Neighbors who once avoided me now stopped by with tools, advice, or just coffee. The kids from down the street asked if they could help plant wildflowers. Even the HOA's new president, a soft-spoken librarian named Elena, apologized on behalf of the board and offered to revise the covenants to prevent future overreach. One evening, as I sat on the freshly built porch of my nearly finished cabin, watching fireflies blink over the restored meadow, I felt a quiet pride. I hadn't just defended my land, I'd reminded everyone that rules matter, that silence isn't consent, and that one person can stand up to a system that assumes you won't fight back. The HOA thought I'd never notice. They were wrong. And because I fought, now no one will ever forget. 6 months after the court ruling, Oak Ridge Estates felt different. Not just quieter, but more honest. The pavilion project was dead. The grant money had been repaid with interest. And Marjorie? She'd moved to a gated community 3 counties over, where, I heard, she'd already filed 3 noise complaints against kids riding scooters. But I wasn't gloating. I was building. My grandfather's cabin, modest, cedar-sided, with a wraparound porch and a stone chimney, was nearly finished. Every beam, every nail felt like an act of reclamation. On weekends, neighbors I'd barely spoken to for years showed up with tools, coffee, and stories of their own HOA battles. Mrs. Langley brought homemade pie. Mr. Chen helped wire the solar panels. Even Elena, the new HOA president, stopped by, not in an official capacity, but as a friend, to plant lavender along the driveway. Then came the letter. It arrived on thick, cream-colored paper, sealed with a wax emblem I didn't recognize. Inside, a formal invitation. The Oak Ridge Community Association cordially invites Mr. Daniel Callahan to serve as chair of the newly formed Property Rights and Transparency Committee. I almost laughed. After everything, they wanted me to help rewrite the rules. Derek thought I should decline. "You've won," he said. "Don't get pulled back into their machine." But I saw it differently. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about prevention. If I didn't step in, someone else might face what I did. Someone less stubborn. Someone without a grandfather's journal or a lawyer cousin. I accepted. At the first committee meeting, I proposed 3 changes. 1. All land surveys must be independently verified before any HOA project begins. 2. Financial records must be publicly accessible online, updated monthly. 3. No construction or alteration on any lot, common or private, without notarized owner consent. The board approved all 3 unanimously. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching sunset light filter through the young oaks we'd planted, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a stranger in another state. "Saw your story online. My HOA just put a fence on my land. What do I do?" I typed back, "Don't stay quiet. Document everything. And never assume they won't notice you fighting back, because now they will." My land was more than dirt and trees. It was a boundary, a legacy, and now a warning. They thought I'd never notice. Now the whole neighborhood watches.